Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. I am a week behind again. I apologize. I've been buried in these comps down in Utah, and I always have big plans of recording during those, but these were very, very busy events, and I wasn't able to make that happen except the last one with Matthew Fittis on one of the weather days. But do have some shows now finally in the can, and going to release this one right away with Hugh Miller. Hugh has, of course, been on the show before. He's part owner in Cross Country Magazine, been flying for 32 years, and I recently noticed, I follow him on the socials, and I noticed he's been flying Sailplanes. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk to him about what that journey's been like, why he did it, what he's getting out of it, what he sees in his future doing it. Because I've been quite fascinated, especially since talking to Gordon about his crazy wave escapades out in the Sierras. You guys, I'm sure, hopefully heard that show. That's amazing. If you haven't, go back and check it out. It's pretty wild. But yeah, I've been pretty fascinated about getting into this myself, so I thought I'd reach out to a newbie who's just exploring it on his own, just did his first comp, and the comparisons, what we're missing, what we might learn from Sailplanes and the glider community, what it costs, what it is involved getting into it, and all those kinds of things. And we finish up by talking a little bit about Cooper Car. We just got back from Cooper Car, always a big festival and event, and fun to see all the new stuff coming out. So we talk a little bit about that, some of the new innovations that are happening. Please enjoy this show with Hugh Miller. Hugh, welcome to the Cloud-Based Mayhem. Thank you for saving me. I'm a week late, and I just reached out to you 3 minutes ago to say, let's do a podcast, and you said yes. I appreciate that. And I know it's later there, but I think I pulled you off the hill, it sounds like. And the reason
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. We're going to start with we're going to go back in history a little bit before we get to your sailplane adventures, but I've been watching your posts lately, and you're getting into sailplanes, and this is something I'm really fascinated about, and I need to get more sailplane pilots on the show, especially after talking to Gordon. That wave stuff he's doing out in the Sierras, that really looks up my alley. Can't wait to go fly with him. But for the 4 people who are listening to the show who don't know your history, can you rewind the clock a little bit, get us caught up to speed? How'd you get here?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with paragliding. I have been for 32 years. My name's Hugh. I'm an addict, something like that. And I'm a co-owner in Cross Country Magazine, and I love paragliding and now gliding as well. And I've also done a teeny weeny bit of hang gliding in the past as well, until I realised how heavy they are and how weak I am. So yeah, that didn't last very long. Yeah, is that all right? Is that enough?
I think that's good. 32 years paragliding, a bunch of comps. You were co-owner of the magazine. You helped publish our book. That was awesome. You're very helpful in
of course.
That.
Yes,
that was fantastic. And
you and I ages ago, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Well, I think we're ready for the second edition here at some point, I guess. But
have you done any more shows since then?
Oh, a couple.
Sorry.
Yeah, that one was based on the first 100, and what are we, 240 or something now, 235 or something. We're getting up there, but yeah. So, what's this sailplane thing? Why'd you get into it? How is it going?
Well,
what do you know that we don't know?
Oh, yeah. I don't know about that. They're very, very different sports. But I got into it because, I've done a lot of paragliding and a lot of paragliding in the UK. The UK is it's an island, and with today's performance of our paragliders, we're increasingly realizing it's an island, and we're reaching the coast more and more often. And I was kind of curious about what gliders can do, and so I signed up with a friend to do a course last April. Did that, then they give you like a tick sheet when you're learning, so you have to cover handling, landings, takeoff, spins, stalls. It goes on and on. There's I ended up filling out about 70 or 80 tick boxes, and I was just obsessed with getting the ticks. It's just very simple psychology. Just get another tick, go flying, get another tick, you know. And so, yeah, I just really enjoyed the process of learning. And then obviously, as soon as I, you know, got signed off to fly on my own, I just thought, right, off we go cross country, and started getting into cross country flying. And I learned in a club. It's called Lasham, and it's one of the biggest clubs in the world, and they're really pro cross country flying. And there's a load of, you know, really good ex hang glider and paraglider pilots there who are into gliding too. So yeah, there's already people I could talk to and hassle, and, you know, go up dual with and get into XC flying with. So yeah.
Okay, before we go any
That's how I got
farther,
into
a
it.
couple of questions just right there, right in the beginning. How much does it cost? What does it cost to do this?
A lot more than I thought. I signed up for the course. The course was £800 for 4 or 5 days, which is what, $1,000. And I thought, that's it. That'll teach me to be a glider pilot. Wow. No, you have to keep going back. I went solo about 3 or 4 weeks after that. I guess it cost probably £3,000 to train and qualify from start to finish, all in. Maybe a bit less. I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't counting because it was quite a lot. But yeah, it's quite involved. It's more involved than learning to fly planes or paragliders or anything else. And that's mainly because most airfields they winch launch you, so you get towed up and you are going up like a rocket within 2 or 3 seconds of the all out signal. You're doing 50 knots, and then you're doing 90 knots, and you have to really control that ascent. And then they want to see that you're really good. If the line breaks or there's a launch failure at 200 feet, you react really quickly. You dive the glider to the ground, you pick up airspeed, and you land going ahead, or you can be safe basically on the winch. So a lot of the training is around safely launching and landing. Yeah, but it takes a long time.
And what does it cost now when you just go, once you get the qualifications and go out? What does that cost? You're going to go.
It's pretty cheap. It's £10, $12, $13 for a winch launch, and on a good day that's enough. You get launched to 2,000 feet. An aerotow's £35, maybe $40, and every time you get dropped off under a cloud and you're off, you never need to relaunch again. So it takes out all the hassle that is inherent, and the adventure as well. But flying flatlands, choosing the hill, deciding which one to drive to, it's always a last minute decision. It's hard work logistically, and I live in Brighton, the wrong side of London, so it's a lot of effort. I'm used to driving for 3-4 hours to get to a hill, flying for 6-7 hours, and then 3-4 hour retrieve. And I've done that for years and years and years, and I've loved it. But it's actually quite nice to just drive an hour and a half, fly, do a 300-400k flight, land, and be home by 7. So I'm getting old.
Now you say okay, it's a non-event. You get towed up, you're going to go under a cloud, and you're going to go.
Yeah,
but you've got 32 years of experience of doing that. Is that for if it was just somebody off the street that's learning how to fly a sailplane the first time? Is that also going to work like that?
Yeah, they'll always drop you off on an aerotow they'll get you to a good place, and you can release and be pretty confident of getting a climb. Winching less so, because you're lower and you're dropped off straight over the runway, but aerotowing is pretty much a guarantee.
What is better or worse about the learning process? And I'm talking about the exams, the stalls, the spins, what they take you through. I've been told is really what we should be doing with paragliding as well. It's much more involved. You get more. There's more check boxes.
How are your school days, Gavin?
Yeah.
How did you find the experience of learning? Were your teachers strict? Just give me a flavour. Then I can tell you what it's like to learn to glide.
I don't know. I spent all my time in the principal's office, as you can imagine.
Okay. Well, no, you've got a good comparison then to gliding. You spend a lot of time outside the principal's office. It is, they're pretty. There's a lot of discipline. There's a lot of a bit of shouting, don't do it like that. Well, we walked away from that one. It's quite, you have to have fairly thick skin, because I think in most countries, the gliding clubs are still run by a fairly old guard, a fairly established kind of ex-airline, ex-military kind of background people. And to be fair, to run safely, you do need that discipline, because gliders are really heavy and fast, and so is the equipment that gets them in the air. So you do. I'm not saying you don't need the discipline, but coming from a paragliding background where you literally, you're probably doing low hops on your first day, and you get that real taste of freedom and exhilaration. It's a different experience for sure.
You said right at the top that it's a really different sport. It's a really different activity. Yeah. That surprised me a little bit. Why?
Good question. It's a bit, I guess the difference is, if you think of paragliding as being like wing foiling or surfing or windsurfing. So you just turn up with your gear, and you assess the conditions yourself, you have a chat with your friends, and off you go. And you really enjoy the sensations of being in the elements and using the wind and the waves. So gliding is a bit more like, not that I've done much of it, but going out on an ocean yacht and crossing a long stretch of sea where the conditions change a lot more. You don't feel the sea in quite the same way. You're reliant on other people to get you in the water and to help you out when you're in the air, possibly too. But you get to experience probably much bigger seas in more safety. So they're different. I'm not saying one's better or worse. I'd still probably prefer a good day's paragliding, because you get that exposure to the elements, and you're flying right next to birds, and you just seeing the wispies go past on a paraglide is a very different experience. And you're taking off. Your sailplane pilots are fascinated by the way we use, I've forgotten the technical term for it, but the very bottom 1,000 feet of the world's air, and how we're right in the mixing zone when the thermals start. If you're flying in the flatlands and small hills, if you're flying in the mountains and getting low, that's exactly where you're at. Sailplanes never really deal with that part of the air. They're always higher up, and they're always using the clouds much more and less the terrain. So thermaling out of a small hill is, with the birds is a very different experience from being in wave or blatting down cloud streets and not stopping. But yeah.
When you first started doing you first started going XC, was it really nerve wracking? I mean, you're not getting to 16,000 feet like we do over here, and you've got, a multiple number of places to glide to, I would imagine.
Yeah, we had a crap year last year. So my first XCs, we had cloud base of 3,500, 4,000 feet, and I was clinging to the cloud base, like leave one and get to the next one 100 feet below base, next one 200 feet below base. I was really nervous because the thought of landing out is really scary. You need a lot of space. I remember the first few days I learned, I'd be driving home, looking at the places I'd land a paraglide, going, no, it wouldn't land in that park. No, couldn't land in that kids' play area. No, couldn't land on that cricket pitch. No, that feels too small. There aren't that many places you can land. So it's quite intimidating. But then I did some extra training with a really good cross-country pilot who took me out in his motor glider, and he cuts the power at 1,500 feet, and he says, right, where are you going? Why? And you have to get into the right area and set up an approach around a field, and then you're down to 200 feet, and then he points out that it's a vineyard you're about to go into, and you're going to die on the line. So you just have to keep practicing your field selection till you feel more confident with it, and then you feel better about getting low. Still not great. It's very nerve-wracking, but yeah. It's still, that's why we like that stuff as pilots. I think we like having to sort shit out when it gets a bit sketchy. So yeah, obviously the gliders with turbos don't do that. They just get low and pop out the turbo and away they go. But in a pure glider, and there's a bit of kind of like there's a bit of snobbery from the pure gliders about the motor gliders, because
it's like the
is that
e-bike
really
thing.
gliding when you? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, possibly. But you'd only use it when you really need to. So it takes away quite a lot of the adventure, and it changes the way you decide.
Sure.
What you decide. I've been flying. I'm going to really bore you, Gavin. Sorry, I was at Cooper Car, and like everyone was asking things, and I always got the subject back to gliding because I've only just got into it. And I'm really excited by it. So sorry, but I went tandem with a couple of people, and they had a motor, and they were flying into really, I thought, silly, spread out areas, and surprise, about to start the motor. So yeah, I think pure gliding is the way for me for the moment, for sure.
How
and
much?
Obviously, cheaper.
How much do you think your experience of gliding? This is kind of a ridiculous question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is being colored by your 32 years of experience of paragliding? I'm wondering, what non-pilots must be thinking? Do you think they're less nervous about finding a place to land? Do you think because you understand the sky, you understand how everything works. You're attacking it in a totally different aircraft, but I would imagine you're
Yeah, I think that definitely helps. Although glider pilots, it's weird. Like when you're gliding, you are going straight to the darkest bit of the cloud. Diving straight in there doesn't work. You push on to the next one. Paragliding, sometimes we just don't have that option. We don't get to the dark bit because it's too shady beyond it, or we stop and circle before. And glider pilots ask me, why do paraglider pilots always thermal in really weird places, like on the edge of clouds and stuff? And I'm like, well, because we can't get to the good bits. And some days I've flown, I've talked to paraglider pilots, and I've met up with them on the radio, like, Kirsty and Guy and other friends in the UK. And I've said, how have you found it? And they've been, it's really crap. It's really weak. It's like 0.5 to 1 meter. And we've been in really, like 3 meter climbs consistently because we can get to them. So it's, but you do get to sample a lot more clouds, and you get more confident about what works, But equally on a paraglide, you don't have that luxury. You don't have the range. And B, you are cycling to each cloud rather than in a supercar. So by the time you get to it, it is substantially different from the cloud you thought it would be when you set off. And that's what's really struck me about the difference in gliding and paragliding. So classic gliding theory and the classic gliding clouds, yes, they're great, and they totally apply to classic gliding flying. But in paragliding, less so. We have to be much more observant and attuned to the way a cloud is changing rather than the way it looks when we set off.
Is there much?
I don't know about you, but generally, quite often, maybe half the time I set off for a cloud, I'll change en route on a paraglider because it changes.
Yeah, for sure. Is there much, as you're getting into gliding, spending more time in a glider, are there any, oh my God, I didn't know that. Is that happening? Or I wish I'd known that. I mean, oh my God, I wish I'd known that for the last 30 years. Yeah, are you picking up things about the sky and how things work that you didn't know existed?
I think it might have helped me in terms of the forecasting and, when the trigger temperature is going to be, reached and then what and time to leave the hill. I'm definitely more attuned to that. So to pay more attention to that. And I check out the day versus the forecast a lot more, because the glider pilots only really they pay full attention to forecast on the morning. We don't have the luxury of doing that. We have to decide on the day or 2 days before forecast, whereas they decide on the day because they're at the airfield, they load it up, they go det, and it's pretty accurate. So it's made me do that a bit more on the morning of the flying day. And I think it's just made me more confident that it is as per the textbooks, to be honest. It does all make sense. Speed to fly it's sort of relevant to us. I wrote about this in that article a couple of issues ago. But for us, we have to move horizontally a lot more on glide than we think we do. I think to make the best of the air, as this good gliding pilots.
You're talking about your shark?
Do that anyway. Not mine. No, it's
not yours. But I mean the
shark movement. Guy called G Dale, a coach, really good coach. He's coached like the Australian team, the British team, and the Kiwi team, and he's been the national coach for all 3 countries. I think he. I went on a coaching week with him, and he just said, "Yeah, forget about dolphin. You know, that doesn't happen." I'm like, "Really? Okay." And he said it's about block speeds and sharking. So instead of dolphining, where you are accelerating and diving the nose, dropping the nose through the sink, and then pulling back and lifting the nose like a dolphin through the lift, and sort of extenuating your glide path up and down according to conditions. He says that's a complete waste of time, because you're just making your total glide path longer. What you need to be doing is moving like a shark. So move left, move right, as you sense or notice lift increasing off your glide path. So people talk about sniffy lines. So sometimes you can kind of feel the lift, can't you? Other times you might have to just sort of explore over a drier area of land or under some wispies. So that is definitely applicable to gliding and paragliding. And it's I thought because of the gliders, they would be straight lining a lot more. If you look at a good track of a glider pilot on a triangle, they'll deviate from course just as much as a paraglider. They'll be 20-30% off course a lot of the time, following the lines, because they don't want to be turning either. They want to be gliding in neutral air or lifting air as much as they can as well. So just because the performance is triple or quadruple, it doesn't mean that the game of flying efficiently, the rules of flying efficiently, change that much.
And is that much more of an instrument thing in a glider than it is by feel, like we do in paragliding? Or is it just horizon? Are you just looking out forward and you can kind of just feel it?
That's an interesting question. I don't know enough about it, but having flown in a competition, one comp now, and seen how good pilots do it, and asked them if what I'm doing is about right or not, I think it's quite visual. So you're literally, you are flying towards the dark bit of the cloud. You're hanging a right as you hit it. You're going to the next bit and carrying on. If you look up the hyperlapse footage of Stefan Langer on YouTube, you'll see how he connects the clouds. And it's more about that. And then obviously a bit of feel. You can't feel a lot through the stick. You can feel a little bit. I get shouted at if I'm in a duel and I turn the wrong way. They go, it's left, because they notice the left wing rise a tiny bit. It's nothing like a paraglider where it's a bit more obvious. So I'd say it's visual, a little bit of feel, and a little bit of instruments, but it's far more by feel and visual than I'd thought. I thought glider pilots just looked at their instruments and did maths all day long.
Are you spending a lot of time on a simulator?
No.
Okay.
Probably should, but no, I haven't done any. Should I?
I did.
What have you heard?
I don't know. I did one. I think it's the Condor thing, and I remember Eduardo Garza, who was in a couple of the X Alps with me. 2017, 2019, maybe. He because he didn't have any time to go over and scout, he did it all on Condor, which is built for sailplanes.
Okay.
I think it's Condor. Okay. I might be wrong, but so he basically flew the whole course so he could see it, see it from a bird's eye perspective. And, but you're flying it as you can pick the sailplane and the performance and all that kind of thing. But I recently got to fly one, and I flew a task around where we had the PwC in Switzerland in May. So we just pulled up a task and I flew it, from a glider. I crashed and I didn't know how to take off. But it was, I guess it's pretty accurate. I'm just wondering how much you see the little telltales out the window and, and you try to figure out how to use your feet and,
I think, so one thing we have to learn as paraglider pilots is attitude, controlling the pitch, and also the coordination of the stick and the rudder control. So those three things are new and quite baffling. It's like really totally foreign language. So I guess for that would be very helpful. And also just in terms of safety, I've just joined a club more local to me, and you can connect with the ridge, but it's quite sketchy coming back. So they said, look, get on the simulator and you can practice your final glide from the ridge and see which fields you could land in. So I guess from that perspective, it would definitely be helpful. Yeah.
Do you see, It's really funny. Most people that I have spoken with who are, gone from paragliding and got into sailplanes, they never say, "Oh my God, dude, it's so amazing. It's just it's all I want to do." They sound more like you are, that it's interesting. It's cool. It's, you're loving it, but I mean, do you see this just taking over your life? Do you see you stopping paragliding to pursue gliding?
It's quite cool doing it's quite cool doing a loop. I enjoy that. It's very cool going into wave and being at like 14,000 feet and seeing a cold front coming towards you. Yeah, it just opens up new ways of flying and seeing the world, I guess. So yeah, and also the competitions are amazing. I mean, they're way more interesting and varied than I thought, and I would hesitate to say far more interesting than paragliding comps at the moment. Shoot me down, but you get a far bigger variety of tasks. It's much more about a pilot making the most of the day and thinking for themselves than paragliding comps,
because I'm assuming it's all it's start gates. How do they do it? They do it like the old school hang gliding comps?
You choose your start time, elapsed time. So there's some tactics there about when you start to get the best of the day, and also when your competitors start. Some tasks are assigned area where you have to go into 3 set massive cylinders and fly as fast a task as you can. So that means going as far as you can within those 3 cylinders. Each one might be 50 k's big, and make it home, after 4 hours. So that's really interesting, because you have to, find the right streets or work out what the wind's doing. So there's a lot more thinking for yourself. I mean, the fact that Russ Ogden talks about if you make a decision for yourself in a paragliding comp, something's wrong. I think that in itself speaks to a problem in paragliding comps, where, in XC flying, it should be about a pilot's ability to make decisions off their own bat. And gliding, I've found there's still I've been told there's still quite a lot of following the good guys, but given the variety of tasks that we have and the variety of conditions the greater variety of conditions you can fly in, I think it is more down to the pilot to make individual decisions.
Where do you see, you've gotten this taste, just did your first comp, where do you see it going? I mean, the big triangles they're doing in the Alps, out over the Med and up Italy, and I mean, my God,
it's bonkers, isn't it? It's absolutely
bonkers. And what Gordon's doing out in the Sierras and the Perland project, and just some of the stuff that they're doing. I mean, Gordon flying with night vision goggles all night and flying 3,000 plus K. That's just gotta be awesome. Is that your future? Where do you see this going?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, so the flights you were talking about, they took off from Fayence near San Andre, and they flew, I believe they flew down to Corsica and maybe Sardinia even, and then across to Italy. They were at 25,000 feet over the Med, and then this was in March, and they went over Italy and then sort of did some flatland flying on the way back. I don't know. It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I flew in Fayence in August dual, and it was the day that Honorin did 360 and Tia and Bruce. Loads of 300s were done, and we actually flew past some of them as we made our way north to Barcelonette. And I've got to say, my experience in a sailplane was probably disappointing compared with the paragliders, because they're really in amongst the mountains and breathing the air and enjoying it, and we were a bit removed. So for me, I'm not sure if I'm that interested in the really removed stuff where you're super disconnected from what's around you. I like the idea of like wave flying, where you're really close to the wave bar and going up and down it and sort of surfing it like a pillow, or getting a low save and that sort of stuff, and probably just doing it locally in the UK because it's quite convenient and carrying on paragliding as well. And maybe 1 or 2 more comps, because they were fun. I was surprised how fun they were and how safe they were as well. No accidents. Taking off at 3 after the cold fronts passed and going up to 5,000 feet and flying in 40-mile-an-hour winds down cloud streets with your head bouncing off the canopy, because it's the climbs are so strong. It's good fun.
Yeah, there's a couple of my friends have gotten into it, and they talk about, out here in Utah. Well, I'm in Idaho, but we just had these comps down in Utah last couple of weeks, and the weather was really dynamic. And for them, those are the best days. I mean, like you said, they're going right under the anvil and boosting in the hail and then escaping. And then, you need a little bit more lift. You just point it for the darkest, nastiest looking stuff. And I mean, those are the good days for them because they've got the range and the speed. And
when I went back paragliding after, because I hadn't touched the sailplane till April 2023, and I'd done loads of paragliding the year before, loads of cross country, and then I went back into paragliding in about May, June, and I was absolutely bricking it, just wobbling about underneath the cloud. And it was psychological, and I got it back, thankfully, but it did take a bit of adjustment. But there is something to be said about pushing on speed and being able to get through. But I guess you just have to pick your days in paragliding, don't you? And there's a lot to be said for flying on the lighter wind days when as much of the world and the nature around you is within your skill set as possible. You can never make it completely so, but you can definitely load the dice in your favor.
It sounds like there's a lot of, I've been trying to get him on the show for years. Gary Asoba out in, was one of the people who found the whole Texas distance thing back in the day for hang gliders down by Corpus Christi.
Did Gary blow you out? Did Gary blow you out today?
No. He just wants to do it in person.
Was that the last minute request?
No, he didn't. But he wants to do it in person.
None taken, Gavin.
Yes.
None
I
taken.
have to fall back to you. Yeah. So he does. His whole thing is trying to fly certain distances, 600K triangle as fast as you possibly can. So, I mean, totally.
Is that in Texas?
Is that what you call nose down? Well, he flies out of, what is the really famous one out in New Mexico? It's out by Albuquerque. I forget what that airfield's called. Okay. It's got a great name. Moriarty, I think it is.
He was helping, Johnny and Dustin and all those guys with the record encampments and doing all the forecasting, wasn't
exactly.
So,
and he helped us out when Cody and I went down there. I was actually just going to tell a story about Cody and Sailplanes, but he flies, I think, mostly out of Moriarty, but his whole jam is, not necessarily the biggest triangle, but he likes to pick these days and then fly it really fast. Yeah. Just jam it.
That's the attitude of a lot of cross country pilots. It's about speed. It's about optimization, and that's great. What was your speed? 90 k's an hour, and all the rest of it, and how fast you can get around it. But also, it takes out some of the adventure because we like flying till the end of the day, don't we? On a good XC day when the sun's going down, there's something really magical about that. Whereas on a sailplane, you're probably wanting to be home by 5 because that's when the day slows down. So it's more of a blast around for 4 or 5 hours.
Okay. It's a different kind of fun.
But I'm so slow. It took me, I think, almost 8 hours to do my first 500 Ks. And I quite appreciated that, though. I sort of squeezed every drop out of the day I could. And that was part of the fun. So I don't think going faster makes you any happier as a pilot. It's just a sort of, it's a number and a mark of
it's a checkbox.
How efficient you can fly, I guess. Yeah.
When does this turn into, I'm kind of tired of these club planes. I want the Gordon plane.
There is one factor here, Gavin, that sort of makes that decision for me.
The magazine's not paying that much?
It's doing brilliantly well, and we're very grateful to our subscribers. But if they could just have a few more, then maybe it'll happen. My sailplane. So I've just been to the Cooper car, and there's a brilliant new innovation there. We can talk about this a bit by Super or Super. Is it Super or Super?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I always get this
wrong.
Nobody
knows.
Let's call it Super. It's this amazing harness with a built-in reserve and sensors on the harness and via, I think, wire or Bluetooth to the glider. And it detects when the pilot goes into auto rotation and continues to go into auto rotation, and it sends out messages to your if you've got one, your InReach or Spot provider, emergency services, and as you hit a certain safety altitude, it'll deploy your emergency parachute for you. The reason I'm telling you this story is because hopefully it's interesting to talk about a bit more, but also because the price of that was the same as my second-hand glider from 1978. So you can do gliding. You can glide in fairly accessible equipment, or you can spend, if you've got the money, a lot of money and get an Arcus. But Gordon's Arcus does 49 to 1. Mine does 40 to 1. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. They're all good, is what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, you can have a lot of fun with the club planes.
Yeah, exactly. And
you don't need to buy the jet plane.
Just like if you're flying in E and B, the focus should be improving your flying using what you've got rather than trying to jump up to get better.
This innovation that SupAir has, I hadn't heard about that, but I just ran these comps, and with the Flymaster trackers, if you're admin, you're on the back end, one of the things that somebody's looking at, in this case, the PWC is Yvonne, you actually get, I got maybe 10 of these every day, possible reserve deployment, pilot number, Latin long, and none of them were ever a reserve deployment. They were always, people just spiraling or doing, it was something irregular. I'm assuming this SupAir thing's way more accurate. It's not going to just deploy your reserve when you're just doing a heli or something.
So, I don't know enough about it, but it's been, they said, that we talked to the designer, Roman Barthelemy. Ed has just texted me the name, because I'm very forgetful. So Roman, is an engineer drone kind of experience, and he joined SupAir, and they've been working on this for 6 years. I'm not entirely sure of the details, but it sounds pretty interesting. And
sounds great.
And they said, look, we were looking at a way to make paragliding safer. 2/3 of accidents happen from reserves not being deployed in auto rotation. We know several friends between us, and I'm sure listeners know many too, where that's been the cause of serious injury or death. So whilst a company I'd visited before was sort of like, oh yeah, see what you think about that, and we're quite skeptical. I don't know. I think it's interesting, and we'll see. They're doing a lot of testing over the next few months, and I think they're hoping to release it next year.
Is that a kind of a cutaway system too, or does it get rid of the main? Because in auto rotation, often that's what happens, right?
I was interested in that as well. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not being a very good journalist here. I don't know, Gavin. I don't know. There's a separate reserve that you cannot deploy yourself, and there's a I don't think it's an explosive because you can take it on a plane, but there's some sort of ejection system that gets the reserve out quickly when activated. There's all sort of all kinds of electronic circuitry involved in that, and connected to the sensors and all the rest of it.
Wow, cool. I like these kind of innovations. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows? I drove an electric car for the first time, and it was like tightening my seatbelt and telling me off when I was going too near the middle of the road. And then at one point, it's like there's no one else on this road, and I was sort of playing around. I sort of went, let's pretend that I'm sort of lost consciousness and see what happens. And it was like taking over, and red alarms are going, and it was slowing down. And there are pros and cons, aren't there? I'm not saying that's that, sure. But if I was to have a stroke, I'd probably appreciate it.
Yeah. Huh. Cool. What about the people involved in doing it? Have you made a whole new group of friends and new community? Has that been quite interesting? Ooh, that's we should have this as video.
Maybe I find it hard to make friends, Gavin, but I really like the diversity of people in paragliding. I mean, I've made some really good friends who I would never have met were it not for paragliding. And generally people are pretty enthusiastic and encouraging and upbeat in paragliding. And in gliding they are too, but I think it's just a slightly different mentality, and it's a bit more sort of cool, calm and collected. If you're going gliding and you're on the radio, they'll be calling you out by, 382 to Papa 9, transitioning 9,000, 5,000 feet, good air. It's all that sort of talk. There isn't a lot of banter. They're they come from they sort of have this aviation discipline kind of stuff ingrained in them. So I ended up with that official radio, but with a little 2-meter radio, having a laugh with my paragliding friend who's also converted to gliding. So yeah, it's a different culture and ethos, and they're like with Gordon, or the guys up, the guy called Chris Gill in North Wales. There are some really cool characters within it, but I'd say as a whole, it's probably more conservative. Perhaps with a small C, perhaps with a big C.
Okay, yeah, more commercial airline type, I would think. Is that
and Air Force. Okay. There's definitely some sort of military crossover.
Okay,
yeah, I don't know if there is in the
Just
States.
More serious,
yeah, in the UK, yeah,
right.
Yeah, but really encouraging, really friendly, really good. I guess the nice thing is you rely on each other a lot more because you need people to be volunteering, running the winch, most are not commercial, so there is that sense of everyone helps each other out. If anyone lands out, they will be picked up wherever they are. So you grab the trailer, you go out, you might get into an argument with the farmer, you drag a glider across the ploughed fields, and it's all that there's a bit of adventure in that. But yeah, everyone will help each other out. It's just it's slightly less diverse crowd, I guess.
Okay, is that what's the status of sailplanes in terms of the industry? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Is it what's happening with it?
Yeah, I had a look at this last week. So I think there's probably something like 3 or 4 times as many paraglider pilots as glider pilots in the world at the moment. In gliding, there's a sort of a weird sort of age demographic where there seem to be a lot of teens and people in their early 20s involved in the sport. Then a lot of people who are sort of 60 plus, and that's partly because gliding was incredibly popular in the 70s and 80s, and those guys are still flying, and also partly because it is quite expensive. So if you start as a teen and you've got all the junior rates and stuff, you just can't afford it when you get to 25 and you've got a full-time job. So in terms of the industry, I mean, unfortunately there are 4 or 5 big manufacturers who sell gliders for 250,000 euros new, and that's their market. It's quite exclusive in terms of buying new gliders. You have to be pretty rich to afford one, so that's where the industry sort of targets. And there's loads of very cool, exciting innovations like FES, which is front electrical system, electrical motors powered by batteries, but ordinary pilots are nowhere near being able to afford that sort of stuff. Whereas in paragliding, it's kind of more for the average pilot and the normal pilot, isn't it? So that's where the market is.
You just returned from Coupe-Car. What'd you learn? What other than the sub-air thing? What was what are you seeing in the market?
It's lots of conversation. I'm not very good at conversation. After the third, I was like, I've got another 2 days of this, and I was only there for 2 days. Ed and Marcus were there for the 4, so I felt a bit bad about sneaking off early. There's a lot of talk in the trade tents, and most of the brands seemed pretty happy. Lots of refinements going on in terms of into harness development, we spent a couple of hours watching the masquerade, and that's lovely, seeing the parade. I think for visiting pilots, it's got a bit less appealing because there was a paramotor flying around telling people that they had to land because they were in the air after 9 o'clock in the morning, and that was banned, and you couldn't take off after such and such a time, and you had to pre-register to even do the hike and fly from the Dent de Crolles. So I guess that's all necessary measures that are being brought in. But I remember the days when you'd be at a party on the tent, and you'd just see these lights above you, and it would be Raul Rodriguez and Felix like spiraling down because in the middle of the night, and it's like, wow. And we can't even let off lanterns now because it's just different. It's lost some of its magic, I think, but it's still a very exciting weekend, and it's still the fundamental atmosphere is still there for sure. And
this time it wasn't a mud fest. I've been there a couple of times where it was can be pretty wet, but I think
we had good weather. It was nice weather. Really nice.
Anything you want to say more about sailplanes?
It makes you appreciate good aerodynamics. Like, it's quite hard to go back from a submarine Genie Race 5 style harness to a normal one, when you see the difference in performance between 1950s glider and a 1980s glider, and you just look at the shape on the runway and you go, that goes well, that goes well, that goes well, that doesn't. It's just that obvious, you know.
Right.
So it definitely attunes you to the importance of is it fluid dynamics, aerodynamics, I don't know, all that stuff,
Both.
and just you know, how lucky we are as well, I think, in having the access we have to the places we fly and the experiences we have, because most people don't have them. It's pretty nuts what we do.
That brings me to my close. Many people have heard this story because it was on the Mayhem, and I know you did because we worked on the book together, and Cody was one of the chapters. But in one of Cody, I think I've had him on the show twice. One of them, I can't remember if it's the first one or second one, but he had this incredible flight from somewhere in the Wasatch out over the desert, and you know, he was fighting to stay below 18,000, and there's hail, and it was, you know, freezing cold and rowdy, and you know, just a big, you know, U.S. day in the West. And there was at one point there's a sailplane that was kind of circling around him and then headed off into the distance. Never saw him again. And he was imagining, you know, his visors, you know, getting all iced up, and he's, you know, shaking like a leaf, and he's sucking on his oxygen, and he's imagining this sailplane pilot, you know, cruising by, listening to Rachmaninoff, you know, just cruising. Oh, look at that little guy. Look at that leaf in the wind over there. See ya. You know, just imagining the difference between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, but then, you know, on a glider, you don't have those experiences of being down at 300 feet and spotting some swifts or swallows and connecting with that climb. And, you know, you just don't. You don't have that. So I think it's a good story because it sort of speaks to the difference and the exposure to the elements we get as paraglider pilots.
Yeah. And
also the feel of a thermal is, so Mark Watts has this description, like thermaling on a paraglider is like getting your hands into the earth and just working through the soil with your hands. And then hang gliding is like having a spade and like lifting the soil up with a spade. And then gliding is like having a mini digger and just sort of scraping away with a mini digger's bucket, you know. So
using hydraulics.
You do miss out on that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hugh, always a treasure, man. Thank you very much. Thank you for saving me with this show. I appreciate it. I could look forward to keep watching your
pleasure.
Yeah, your.
It's good timing because we've got a masterclass with G Dale, who's the coach. You know, talks about dolphin flying and shark flying stuff. That's coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, so it'll be available online for subscribers as well. So we'll get him to explain it much better than me.
Awesome. Yeah, I think people talked a lot about that one. That one was really interesting. It was a good read. I appreciate you guys, as always, putting out such great content. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gavin, for keeping the show going. And, you know, it's a great contribution for all of us. I mean, I listen to it most in the winter. I think it's just such a nice thing to do, you know, in the downtimes. I think the magazine gets most read in the winter as well. So, it's great for keeping the spirits up. Exactly.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
No worries.
If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind-the-scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So, for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.